Welcome back. Today we're taking a closer look at the guns that never should have been bought in the first place. The ones that looked good on the counter, maybe even felt exciting in the moment, but turned out to be nothing but trouble. Some were oversized monsters that no one could handle. Others were pocket pistols that jammed every other shot. And then there were the budget bargains that left buyers with nothing but disappointment. These are the firearms that fooled people into thinking they were smart buys, when in reality they were some of the worst choices you could make. Stick with me, because we're counting down the models that proved hype doesn't equal quality, and cheap doesn't equal reliable. And if you enjoy honest takes on guns, the good, the bad, and the downright stupid, make sure to like this video. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Number 7. Big Magnums. Some people thought buying the biggest revolver they could find would make them look unstoppable. Instead, it proved they had no idea what they were signing up for. This hand cannon tips the scales at 3.5 pounds, with certain versions pushing past 5. Depending on the barrel, it stretches anywhere from 11 inches to more than 17. With a 5-inch snub, it feels awkward, and with a 10-inch tube, it's closer to holding a cut-down rifle than a sidearm. The cylinder only carries 5 or 6 shots, but the cartridges are outrageous. We're talking 45-70 government, 30-30, 460 S&W, even 500 S&W. These are hunting rounds designed to bring down big game. Fired out of a revolver, the recoil snaps your wrist, the blast rattles your bones, and the fun wears off after the very first trigger pull. New models sell around $1,100 to $1,200, with some versions climbing close to $1,700 depending on caliber and barrel length. Buyers paid for what they thought was the ultimate statement piece, only to find it's too heavy to carry, too brutal to shoot for long, and far too impractical for real use. In the end, this oversized Magnum is more circus act than firearm. Number 6. Derringers. People grabbed this thing thinking it was the ultimate pocket protector. Tiny, lightweight, and easy to hide. On the surface, that sounds smart, but here's the reality. It's a 2-shot gamble that belongs in the Old West, not on your waistband today. Overall length is barely 5 inches, with barrels running as short as 1 inch and stretching up to 3. Weight stays under a pound, so yeah, it disappears in your pocket. The problem? It disappears on the range too. Accuracy falls apart after a few yards, and you're basically pointing and praying. The design gives you no cylinder, no magazine, no backup. You get 2 barrels, stacked or side by side, and that's it. 2 rounds, fire them, then stop and reload 1 shell at a time. Calibers vary from 22 LR and 25 ACP to 38 Special and 44 Colt, but with such a short barrel, none of them hit hard. Recoil snaps more than you'd expect, and the sights are little more than decoration. Smaller models hover in the $250 to $400 range, while fancier or big bore versions can push into the $500 to $600 mark. What they really bought was a 2-shot throwback that's more dangerous to their confidence than to any threat. Number 5. Saltwood Brownings. At first glance, this looked like a dream rifle. Smooth steel, rich walnut, the kind of gun you'd expect to keep forever and maybe even pass down. But here's the problem. Those beautiful stocks were treated with salt, and salt doesn't forgive. Over time, it started eating away at the very metal holding the gun together. Screws rusted, the action pitted, and what looked like a prize quickly turned into a nightmare. On paper, it all sounded perfect. Weight right around 7 to 8 pounds, barrels running between 22 and 24 inches, chambered in all the right calibers like 30-06, 270, and 243. Even the magazine gave you 4 or 5 rounds, depending on the version. If you just read the specs, you'd think you were getting a reliable, do-it-all hunting rifle. But the real story was hiding in that stock, and it ruined everything. Expect to see these rifles trading in the $1,200 to $1,500 range when the saltwood issue is known. Buyers thought they were holding onto a classic. What they really bought was a slow, creeping disaster, an heirloom that eats itself from the inside out. Number 4. Boydo Double Barrel Shotguns. At first glance, this looked like a no-nonsense double barrel for folks who wanted that classic side-by-side style without spending big. The problem? You got what you paid for, and then some. Instead of a reliable workhorse, buyers ended up with a shotgun that felt rough in the hands and even worse on the shoulder. Some of these came in at about 7 to 8 pounds, with barrels stretching 26 to 28 inches. Chambered in common 12 or 20 gauge, it carried exactly 2 shells, loaded through a break-action design. Simple enough, but the action often felt loose. The triggers were heavy and the recoil hit harder than it should. After a few shots, the bargain didn't feel like such a bargain anymore. Expect to see new double-barrel models priced around $550 to $740. Buyers thought they were scoring a classic on the cheap. In reality, they brought home a shotgun that looked the part but handled like a clunky farm tool. What was supposed to be old-school charm turned into one of those purchases you regret every time you open the safe. Number 3. Sky CPX-2. This little pistol was marketed as the budget-friendly answer for concealed carry. Small frame, lightweight, and a low price tag had people rushing to pick one up. But anyone who actually shot it quickly learned why it earned a bad reputation. The size checks the right boxes for carry. Overall length sits at just over 6 inches with a barrel right around 3 inches. Height is about 4.5, and the whole thing weighs only 15 ounces unloaded. It feeds from a 10-round magazine chambered in 9mm, which on paper makes it sound like a practical, no-nonsense carry piece. The reality is far less appealing. The trigger pull feels like dragging a brick across gravel, long, heavy, and inconsistent. Recoil out of that tiny frame is snappy and uncomfortable, making follow-up shots a chore. Reliability issues pop up often, from failures to feed to random jams. Accuracy past close range is more wishful thinking than precision. The price tag was the big draw. Brand new, these sit between $200 and $300, which made people think they were scoring a deal. Instead, they walked away with a pistol that feels cheap, shoots rough, and too often fails when it matters most. Number 2. Lorson Saturday Night Specials. This was the gun that promised affordability but delivered headaches. Marketed as the budget pistol for anyone who needed something cheap, it ended up being one of the worst buys you could make. The frame was built from lightweight alloy, which kept costs down but also made the gun feel flimsy in the hand. Most models measure just over 6 inches long with a barrel around 3.5 inches. Weight comes in at about 22 ounces unloaded. Chamberings were typically 25 ACP, 32 ACP, or 380 ACP, feeding from single-stack magazines that held 6 to 7 rounds. On paper, that sounds serviceable. In practice, it was anything but. Triggers were heavy and gritty, safeties were questionable, and jams were common. Accuracy fell apart quickly past a few yards, and the overall lifespan of the gun was short thanks to poor materials. Many ended up cracking or seizing after limited use. The price was the bait. New, they sold for under $200. Even now, they show up in the used market for around $100. Buyers thought they were saving money, but what they really paid for was a pistol so unreliable, it earned the Saturday Night Special nickname and a spot on the list of worst buys you could make. Number 1. Winchester Model 1911 SL. They called it the Widowmaker, and trust me, that nickname wasn't a joke. This shotgun was sold as a cutting-edge semi-auto, but it turned into one of the most dangerous mistakes ever put in a gun rack. Specs looked promising on paper. It weighed about 8 pounds, with barrel options running from 28 to 30 inches. Chambered in 12 gauge, it carried 5 shells in a tubular magazine, plus one in the chamber. The action was a long recoil system meant to automatically cycle rounds. To the average buyer, it sounded like the perfect rival to Browning's legendary Auto 5. The problem? It was anything but. Here's where it went off the rails. There was no charging handle. To cycle it, shooters had to push the barrel back by hand. People pressed it against tree stumps, the ground, even their own chest. If the gun happened to be loaded, accidents followed, and they weren't small accidents. That design flaw alone gave it the Widowmaker label. Add in brutal recoil, constant jams, and weak build quality, and you had a shotgun that was more hazard than help. Today, these usually sell in the $500 to $600 range. Collectors may pay more, but for anyone who bought it as a shooter, it turned into a great regret. That wraps up the list of guns that turned buyers into instant regret stories. Some were flashy, some were cheap, but all of them had one thing in common. They never should have been bought. If you enjoyed calling out these bad decisions, smash that like button and tell me in the comments which one you think was the worst offender. Thanks for hanging out, and get ready because the next list is gonna hit even harder.